This is the Labor Relations Act changes as opposed to the Employment Standards Act changes. Union certification and bargaining. So right now there's a system in place that most of us are used to where if a group of employees decide that they want to try to bring in a union, they will contact the union comes in. If they get 50% of the people to say that they want to have a vote, then they can come in and do a vote. If 50% of the people say yes, in a secret ballot, we want to have a union, then the union becomes certified. This is now changing. So they have introduced what's called card-based union certification process, and they have chosen 4 sectors to proceed with. One is home care, one is community services, one is temporary help agencies, and one is building services sector. Now, they have left this wide open in the legislation that they do not need to go back to the legislation to add more sectors. They can do that arbitrarily at any point, but this is where it's starting. This is where they feel the people are not getting all of their fair rights. So, what a card-based union certification means is that if you have 20 employees and 20% of them, which would be 4 people, want to invite the union in, they will come in and you now have to hand over all of that private and confidential data that's in your HR files to the union. So they take all of that data and they go around to each of your employees and they say, would you sign this card, please? There is no democratic process. There is no private vote. They're just having to sign a card. So that's scary because intimidation could bring a big thing into this. If you had a group of employees that were really avid for it, they could go around all of them and say, hey, you better sign this card or else. We know where you live.
No vote. No vote.
The vote is the card.
There's
no secret ballot. There's no anything. This does not have to happen in your workplace. This can be taken out. The Ontario Relations Board will oversee it, but they can go to people's houses because you've given them all the HR files. They can just run around to all of the locations that they choose and get people to sign on and come back to you. The difference is instead of 50% of the employees, you have to have 55% of your employees. So it's a scary thing. Going back to my slide where it said vote, this is the people that the government is making happy. They're making the unions happy. And the unions, as they start to unionize more and more of the employers out there, they're going to gain votes as they steamroll their way through the province. So,
are there not significant regulations surrounding using intimidation tactics to encourage people to sign up for unions, though, or like how does that fall?
Who's going to police it? Who's going to? So say Scotiabank. Say somebody went to everybody's house and got them to sign up, and went back to Scotiabank and said, "We've signed up this branch." Who is now going to go around and ask everybody if they were intimidated, if they were...
Who's going to verify the signatures?
So...
Excuse me, Paul, you don't spell your name Mickey Mouse.
Yeah.
That's terrible.
So, but again, there was absolutely no research or analysis or anything to any of this bill. It was just, this is what we're doing. It's a political trade, and it's pummeling down the tracks. So here we are at the misclassification of an employee. So the onus is going to be on you to make sure that any relationships that you have in business with people are in fact at arm's length, and that they can't be considered an employee. The enforcement people are going to come around and they're going to assess your place of business and what's happening there, and they will look to decide whether the person sitting there that is supposed to be a business consultant who's there helping you to get a project done actually falls under the classifications of an employee or not. So the first characteristic of a subcontractor is that they usually work independently and unsupervised. Then they're free to work when and for whom they choose. They may provide services to different payers at the same time. They can accept or refuse work from the payer. And they're using the word payer there instead of employer because they're not supposed to be your employer. The relationship does not present a degree of continuity, loyalty, security, subordination, or integration. So you don't want your subcontractor to always be there basically working in partnership with you. The worker does not have to carry out the services personally. So they can hire another party to do the work or help to do the work, and that subcontractor pay the cost. You don't pay the cost for them doing so. The payer has no say in whom the worker hires. And it can have financial risk and incur losses to the subcontractor because they usually pay fixed monthly costs even if the work is not currently being done. So anybody that you have that relationship with, you're going to have to sit and go tick, 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 okay, we're all right. If not, if they come in and they say, we're sorry, that person is an employee, not only will you be fined, you will have to back pay. They will go through your books and find out how long you have been paying that person, and you will have to come up with the source deductions for all of that time. And the tax, if they haven't been paying their own income tax, you will be required to remit that income tax, and then you will have to find some way to collect it from the subcontractor yourself. So here we're going to look at the Ontario minimum wage history. Can everybody see the numbers on there? I'll try to use my pointer. Okay. So on February 1st, 2005, minimum wage was $7.45. And we're going to work our way all the way over to October 2019. So this was the rate of inflation, the average rate of inflation during that time. And so we went from $7.45 in 05 to $7.75 in 06, and that was a 4% increase. And then we went to $8, which was a 3% increase. And then we went to $8.75, which is 9% increase. Now, at that time, inflation was only 2%, so it wasn't tied to inflation at all. And then it went to $9.50, which was a 9% increase, and $10.25, which is an 8% increase there. Again, the average inflation in 2009 was only 0.31. So when they did studies on everything, they have found that looking at inflation versus the minimum wage, everyone has been earning approximately $10 an hour steady. That's how it's grown. So even though that was $7.45 in 2005, its purchasing power was worth $10 an hour. So there was a 3-year gap between 2010 and 2014 where there was no raise. And this is where this advisory panel, the minimum wage advisory panel, came in and said, we need to look at this because it's just been arbitrary, different variety of amounts, variety times of year that these things have gone up. So we're going to make this, as at June 1st, 2014, starting at $11 an hour, we are going to move ahead and make sure that it always happens in October. We'll announce it in March, it'll be based on inflation, and it will carry on. So we did that for 3 years. And then all of a sudden in October 2017, we went from $11.60 to having a 21% jump by January. So After making this rule, we're gonna break it and we're gonna jump it 21%. From January 2018 to January 2019, we're looking at a 29% jump. And then if you compare January 2019 back to October 2016, which is just over 2 years, it was a 32% jump that they have on the table. The October one, you can't really see it there, 2019, I have put it in as inflation at a rate of 2%, but I think you're going to see a much bigger jump there because, as I said, I believe that inflation is going to increase quite a bit over this whole thing. So if you took the $11.60 in October of 2017 and you increased it by the rate of inflation over the years, it would have taken 13 years to get to $15 an hour. So they've just advanced that from 13 years to just over 2 years of a jump. But this isn't going to have any effect, not according to them. Looking at this is just for your regular wage earners. There's also changes to students under 18 that work under 28 hours. Anybody that works over the 28 hours is considered a regular worker, even though they are students. So, Paul, to answer your question about earlier about students, so it's going to $13.15 on January 1st, 2018, and $14.10 on January 2019. Liquor servers earning tips, they're going to $12.20 and then $13.05. This one's interesting, home workers. So it's going to $15.40 on January 1st, 2018, and $16.50 on January 1, 2019. And I think I want a job like that. I want to be able to work from home and make more than regular workers make and not have those commuting expenses and everything else. That's one of the reasons why your employee is going to come to you and say, yeah, I don't like coming into work anymore. I'm going to work from home because that'll give me a raise. So, and then there's changes to the hunting and fishing guides that are going up as well. So I took the numbers and I turned it into a chart of exactly what this is going to cost. I calculated the CPP and the EI and used my nice Excel program. Whoop, that's not what I was trying to do. I really need a touch screen. Go back to that. There we go. Okay, so this line here is a full-time worker. This line here is a part-time worker. Minimum wage $11.40, minimum wage $11.60, and minimum wage $14, minimum wage $15, full-time worker, part-time worker. And there is no limit on a part-time worker. They do not have a definition for what a part-time worker is. It's kind of a rule of thumb. It ranges anywhere from 20 hours to 30 hours as it varies from industry to industry. So at $11.40 an hour, your full-time minimum wage earner is getting $855 a week, or sorry, a pay. I've got a bi-weekly. And adding the CPP and the EI, it's costing you $910.18 each pay for a total of $23,664.68 a year. When you move up to $11.60 an hour, that total changes, it goes up by about $400. When you move down here to $14 an hour, suddenly the jump between here and here is $5,500. And when you go to $15 an hour, that jump is $7,500 between October 2017 and January 2019. Your worker has just gone from $23,664 to $31,000. Your part-time worker has gone from earning $15,718 in September of 2017 to $15,997 in October of 2017. And then on January 1st, 2018, they'll be making $19,342, so you're looking at about a $3,500 difference there. And at $15 an hour, they're making $20,700, so they are making $5,000 a year. How many employees do you guys have?
Well, we have 35 that fall in this, that are gonna be affected.
Yeah.
35. And the other 25 are gonna be pissed off.
Yeah. So, this is, sorry, while I have a technical difficulty here. This is not where it ends.
I see why the government loves this, because they're gonna get so much tax dollars out of this, is unbelievable. And this is the only reason why they do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're gonna roll in it.
Taxes.
Roll in it.
So I've taken your full-time wage earners and put down the 4 rates. Put down that number that we had on the previous page. But now we're gonna add 4% vacation time to those people that are less than 5 years, and the source deductions for the vacation pay, and the 2 days leave that they're now going to get. And so the total is now $24,853 at the current minimum wage, $32,762 versus $23,664. So that's $9,000 right there. If they happen to be 6% vacation earners because they've been with you for more than 5 years, this is the totals you're looking at. So they're $33,439 versus $23,600. So almost a full $10,000 for those employees that have been there for 5 years. So how many people want to keep their employees more than 4 years? Just by letting them go, you've just saved quite a bit of money.
And then you also have to pay for training costs of new employees
Yeah.
and the time and investment in that.
It's not a fun place to be.
So that would
Especially
mean
when you-
with 35 employees, you're looking at over $320,000.
Oh, you're a merry ray of sunshine.
But groceries aren't going to go up.
No.
Where's that come from?
Yeah, that's right, not gonna pull that out of your hat, will you?
So, there are consequences and risks to more than just the employer. The first one, of course, is the higher chance of audit and fines, because they've hired all these extra workers, and they've made new rules that you have to figure out all by yourself how to follow.
Are you allowed to shoot them or trespassing
And
on
then the
your
government will
property?
pay for all your expenses while you're in prison.
It's going to become an administrative
That's an
nightmare. You're going to need more time, more money, more tools, more staff. I know employers who are still using an Excel spreadsheet, and up until now it's been fine for them to calculate between that and the Todd calculations online that you can access. They haven't really had any trouble. They don't want to take the time to learn an accounting program. They don't have a bookkeeper working for them. Their staff are non-administrative workers. They are going to need an administrator now. They're going to have to get somebody that's going to be able to get them through all of that paper. You're going to have tighter margins, lower profitability, because your profitability is being transferred to the worker. The money that you were making before is now being passed directly onto them. There's going to be scrutiny over outsourced and subcontracted work, so you have to deal with that. You will have a loss of skilled and trained workers earning slightly higher than the minimum wage because, as Joe said, they're going to be ticked off. And they're going to say, I have spent 5 years getting to this place, and those people coming in the door are now making the same amount of money as I am. So why am I doing a job where I have responsibilities? I should just go out and get a job at McDonald's and take their training, and that's all I have to do. And McDonald's is going to say, yes, please, we want you mature people to come here. We don't need to hire students anymore. We don't want untrained workers at $15 an hour. So sure, we'll take all of the people that don't want to work for you anymore because they don't feel valued. There will be higher source deductions, vacation pay, and holiday pay. There will be a reduction in your training budget because you're going to swap that money out into the wage pool because you have to get that money from somewhere, and it's not going to fall into your laps immediately, even if you decide that you're going to increase the price of the goods that you're selling or the services that you're selling. That's not going to happen immediately, but on January 1, that's pretty immediate for your staff. They are going to be making that money.
Which means that the people that are just above this, once they're pissed off, what's the first thing they're gonna say? I want more money.
That's right.
It becomes a working poor.
So,
People making $15 an hour.
yeah, that's right.
And senior citizens.
Yeah. There will be increased overtime due to employee absences because the government has just told you, first of all, that everybody gets an extra 2 days off.
And you're gonna take them.
Because they've extended all of the different leaves, and also because you are going to have staff leave. So these people that stick with you are going to have to work harder in order to accommodate the change to the workplace. You're going to have lower customer service due to employee absence or unskilled workers, because if everybody's flying by the seat of their pants trying to get everything done in a day, they're not going to be being nice to the customers the way that you have trained them to. You are going to have difficulty assessing worker skills and worth due to the pay equity. That control is being taken away from you now. And of course you're going to have to face the prospect of unionization. The competition will be greater from larger companies who already were doing a lot of these things. People from the city, the lower paid jobs are more prevalent in rural areas. People in the city are not going to be hit as hard. Their workers will be making more because the cost of living is higher there. So people that are out of province, that are not facing this, unless you're PEI, you have that one day. But even as close as Gatineau, any businesses in Gatineau could easily put people across the river out of businesses, and they can pay their people lower because they're in Quebec and they're not in Ontario. You're going to be facing online businesses that are not affected by that increase, because even if you have an online presence in Ontario, you are still subject to it, and everybody else is not. There's a loss of decision making in your worker hours and location. And the rural areas mean greater chance that more than one employee will require leaves of absence at the same time, which I had already touched on earlier. So now we're going to look at the worker and the risks and consequences that they face. And the first one, of course, is going to be layoffs and reduced hours. Students and youth it's going to be difficult for them to find work because of the reduction in other locations. The most vulnerable worker will be at the greatest risk. 2/3 of the job loss expected are to be women and workers under 25. The value for money means hiring for experience. So if you don't have it, then you don't have any value to add. The over minimum fringe workers will lose their seniority and the wage gap, and they will become frustrated. There will be a reduction in training for the workers. They will have the extra workload due to layoffs and reduced hours. They will have a loss of sense of value because they've been loyal to you and worked for you all this time, and they're not seeing any kind of compensation or any kind of reward other than, I guess, their 6%. They will be rebounding into poverty. So pretty much everybody understands that poverty exists at the level of minimum wage. So if you raise the minimum wage, you are not bringing people out of poverty, you are lowering the people that are up here back into it. There will be outsourced work. People will just make sure they tick all of the boxes in order to do it, or they'll outsource it to Quebec or to Manitoba, not Alberta, because they're going to $15 an hour as well, or even into the US. Services, especially the service industry. The unionization and card certification by co-workers, they will have the loss of privacy of their personal information. They will have no control over that whatsoever. They're not going to be able to say to their employer, do not hand my information. I am totally and completely against unions. I do not want them to have my personal information. And even though the Privacy Act says that you can't hand that over, this new legislation says you have to. So.
But which one supersedes in that? There just seems to be a legal quagmire brewing with that one in particular.
Well, that one is federal, and this one is provincial. So it's all a matter of what the province wants to adopt.
The province will do it. I was in a privacy kerfuffle for years, and even though it was deemed unconstitutional at the municipal level, the province said we want it, and they just steamrolled.
Wow.
And there's a good chance that they will end up in a higher tax bracket, which may cause them to lose benefits under the Trillium or drug benefit programs, subsidized housing, and daycare. So here's your extra money, but guess what? You now have to pay for all of these things that previously, as minimum wage workers or poverty people, were getting those benefits. And I went to the website and ran a little test. They have an ability for you to see if you can qualify for what benefits. And so you type in, you answer a couple of questions, whether you have kids or not, what you pay in rent, or if you own your house, and so I put it in there, and sure enough, it went from somebody earning $11.40 an hour was qualifying for $2,200 if they were renting and had one child. That dropped down to $700 when I was running the calculations. So
pieces.
it's okay. Nobody's going to want to hire you anyway. So. So the Ontario economy is facing risks. The first one being that businesses will relocate to another province if they can. Like, why stay here and face all of this when you can just move to another space, especially in places that border, for instance, Ottawa and Kingston and all of those places down there. All you do is slip over to Quebec. So, of course, there's a whole new set of laws there concerning language, but there's the increase to inflation that will happen, that will affect the economy, a higher unemployment rate, more card certified unions, whether any of these things are positive or negative, but they are definitely consequences. There will be greater poverty, and there's a good chance there will be increased bankruptcies, both on a personal level and on a business level, because as businesses try to struggle to get through, or because people get laid off and they don't have a source of income any longer and they can't, so many people live within the means that they have. If that means is taken away, then so is everything else that they've worked so hard for. The municipal government hike in equality wages is going to lead to higher property taxes, because guess where municipals get their income from? They get their income from property taxes. So where are they going to get the money when they are bringing in casual workers in the summer or in any of their busy times? Those people are coming in, and now instead of being able to pay the minimum wage, if your regular workers are making $23 an hour, then so are your part-time people or your temporary casual laborers. They're now going to be making $23 an hour.
I think that the municipalities have done an assessment, and it wasn't going to be a huge impact on them, the information they released.
Based on the fact that most of them are unionized and their contracts allow for that, their contracts will stay in place, but as at January 1st, 2020, all bets are off. So unless they learn to work without those extra people, then they will be facing the exact same thing from then. So yes, that was the result of the study, the way that the economy sits right now at this window in time. So, increased inflation will increase the social program expenses. And so, now we've moved on to some strategies to try to offset what's happening. The first one is going to be all about planning. You're going to have to spend a lot of time reworking your business plan, resetting your compass, and examining your profit margins, because if you don't know what your picture looks like right now and what is being put onto you, you have no way to make a plan to get where you're going. You can't just get on the bus and go anywhere. You have to have a destination in mind, and so planning is going to be the biggest part of your business. Paperwork will be your best friend. Salary grids, job descriptions, a production program where you get to decide what a person has to do to qualify to move up the ladder, to be able to be paid more than the other person. Otherwise, you'll just end up losing those people because they're not going to continue to work the same drive that they have, that they're giving you loyally and faithfully, when this person sitting over here is just on their cell phone all day long and not doing anything. If you don't have an administrator or you're not a paperwork person, then you are going to have to look into that. One of the biggest things that I ever encounter as I go from place to place working as a business coach is I'll come in the door and they'll want me to be doing marketing for them. So I'll say, what's my marketing budget? And they say, we don't have a budget. People come in the door and we just say, yes, we'll buy that, because that's all the time that they have to think about it. So I say, okay, well, let me look at your cash flow, because it should be a certain percentage of your cash flow. And they'll say, we don't have a cash flow. We don't have time for that. I'll say, okay, well, if it's okay with you, just let me have a look at your books. And they go, the books are kind of behind. And the reason that they're behind is because it's the one thing that people can set aside. They can't not serve their customers. They can not restock their shelves. They have to do those things. And at the end of the day, when they're really tired and they want to go home and see their kids, they just say, all right, I'll do that tomorrow, or I'll do that tomorrow's tomorrow, I'll do that tomorrow's tomorrow, and then sometime over the holidays they'll sit down and frustrate themselves trying to get caught up. And that is absolutely not going to be an option anymore. Whether you can bring an existing worker that you have a lot of confidence in and is doing well for you into that position and let them handle some of that for you, that would be a good answer, but otherwise you might actually have to outsource, but make sure you tick those boxes if you outsource. So then you will probably have to do some upgrading of your tools, whatever it is that you're using to calculate all your source deductions, to keep track of how long people have been there, who gets what, as far as the time off, how long people have been off, when they're due to be back, all of your WSIB and things. There's just so many things that you quite likely might have to upgrade the tools that you use in order to do all of your administrative work. You will have to stay in compliance. How do you stay in compliance? Well, first of all, you have to know what the compliance is. So you have to ask questions from the Ministry of Labor. You have to know exactly what it is that they expect of you so that you don't get those big fines when they come knocking on your door. It's too bad, because they should be handing you a booklet that says exactly what to do, but that doesn't seem to be happening so far. You're going to have to verify your non-employee relationships for your subs and your outsourced work, and you're going to have a document of that. You're going to have to prove to them that you actually did the check and yes, that's what happened. So now in most cases, they're looking out for the employees who are being used as a subcontractor against their will, essentially. It's people who are being treated as a subcontractor instead of as an employee to try to avoid the source deductions. But once they get their teeth into it, that they're not going to stop at that. So one of the biggest things that I am recommending to my clients is that they trade time for money. So they talk to those employees that are affected initially, the ones that were making the $11.40 an hour and they're now going to get $14 an hour. They don't have that money yet. They're not used to spending that money. They haven't had that windfall, so they don't need to worry about what they're losing or what they're gaining. But if you said to them, hey, how would you like it if you got to have every Monday morning off so that you could go to your kid's school and you could help in the classroom? What is it the one thing that everybody says when you ask them how they are? Well, everybody's busy. Nobody has time for anything. So I think you would be surprised how many people are willing to do that. Like, yes, I would love to go home at 4 o'clock instead of 5 o'clock every day and have that extra hour with my kids at night, or be able to just cook a nice dinner instead of slapping together something and putting it in the microwave. Or then there's people that would be like, yes, I don't want to have to get up that early and be at work at 8 o'clock in the morning. I would love to come in at 9 o'clock in the morning. So having the opinion that everybody is just looking in it for the money, I think you would be surprised. But it will have the least effect on those people that have the minimum wage because they're used to living within a certain budget, and this big windfall of the extra money means that if they give up an extra hour every day or a half a day a week, they're going to make that same amount of money on their paycheck. And so it's an opportunity for you to be able to now take that money that you just regained because you're not paying it to them anymore and pay that increase forward. So now you have your $14 an hour for minimum wage in January. You have these $15 an hour workers. If you now say to them, I will give you an extra $1 an hour, I will pay you $16 an hour. And then you say, but if you want, if you take that $16 an hour, then you may end up with the exact same amount of money you have right now and still get to leave an hour early every day. Or still get to take a half a day. So, no, it means you're going to take your staff and you're going to take the new tools that you bought and you're going to create a schedule that says half the people will start early and half the people will leave early, or start late and leave early, and some of them will be off on Monday mornings and some of them will be off on Thursday afternoons because they want to go and play shuffleboard with their friends or go to the curling rink or go skating or anything. Did you have a question, Roger?
Well, that would work for a while though, would it not? But because if they're still taking home the same amount of money, they are going to sooner or later realize that they can no longer live on that same amount of money.
Well, the idea is if absolutely everybody did this, it would have less of an impact on the economy. It would make it so that you wouldn't necessarily have to increase your services and your products to the people, and maybe that $1,300 a year that they're predicting it's going to cost people every year won't exist. Because if you can just make people work a little bit more efficiently, because I don't know how many people here, but I've been to a lot of businesses where by the end of the day, people are standing around, they're waiting to go, they're looking at the clock, they're talking to their coworkers, they're checking their phone, they're talking to their kids about what did you get your homework done? They're no longer concentrating on their tasks because it's just human nature to wind down. And so you're not going to lose work out of them because you're probably not getting work out of them at that time of day. Or the same thing in the morning. You have the people that come in and they're like, oh, I'm so tired. I was up late last night. I was power watching all of these shows on Netflix and I just had to stay up and now I'm tired and I need coffee and they just don't get it. So you look at your workers and you see which ones would get the most value over coming in late.
Just a way to reduce hours is by shrinking the shifts.
That's right. And if you do this, if you don't just say, listen, Paul, I'm reducing your hours because you're not my favorite person, then he's going to run to the Ministry of Labor and he's going to say constructive dismissal. But if I say, everybody, this is what's happening. We don't want to lay people off. It's inevitable because if we have 35 workers and it's going to cost us $350,000, there's absolutely no way for us to manage this. So what we're going to do is ask you all if you would like to have more time. Would you like this? I know I would have loved it as I was raising my family. It was, I would still love it now.
I can see it more as owners just putting in 70 and 80 hours a week now instead.
Yeah.
That's all I see. I mean,
Wait, what, Vince, you're self-employed, doesn't that mean you get to take off?
today, just so I could do something.
Yeah, that's right.
So what about a business where I'm 24 hours a day? My hours are set. There has to be somebody to cook breakfast, there has to be somebody there to make beds, there has to be somebody through the night.
And that's the thing, is where if you have a really high functioning, efficient staff, you are gonna be able to use this as a
Well,
strategy.
I'm not gonna ruin everybody's Christmas with all this crap, but first thing January, I'm calling a meeting and saying, okay, this is what's going down, because they don't know. They just know they're gonna be making more money. They don't know all of this other stuff.
No, exactly.
And I'm gonna say, this is what they're talking about, and these are gonna be the consequences of. So if all of you take 2 days off, then there will be hours cut. If everybody forgoes their 2 days, then we don't have to address.
What is this 2-day limit? Is it a pay period or?
No, so, this is something that people who had 50+ employees are already accustomed to, but your employees are allowed to take 10 personal leave days off a year.
A year.
But they haven't come right out and said the first two, they won't answer that question, but for all intents and purposes, the way the other stuff is working, it will be the first 2 days that they take off as personal emergency leave, which you're not allowed to ask for a doctor's note for. They're on your money. You have to pay.
A year.
Yes.
Each
time of
staff
the week.
member
2 days a
gets
year.
2 paid days a year.
Yeah, okay.
So when you add up, it's a lot of days that people are getting
And no
off.
doctor's note required.
No, you can ask for proof, but you can't
And if
demand a doctor's.
If you as the employer go to all your staff and you make that offer of, well, who would like to come an hour later, in later, and who would like to leave an hour earlier, and you find all the keeners and really good people that you really like, the ones that are saying, well, I come in early, I set up everything, make sure everything's in place. Those are the ones that say, I've got kids, but they're gone. And you're left with the people on the phone going, here I am, saying, I'm on my phone.
Well, this is where scheduling skill comes in. Just because people say, I want to be the one to leave early, doesn't mean that you say, okay, all you people get to go. You still get a choice in who works what hours, and whether that means this week person A gets to leave early and next week person B does, and the next week it's A again and B again, to make things fair so that everybody has the proper fluctuation. But you might just have somebody that says, I really want Thursdays off. And if that works for you, then that's great.
And with all the seniority and the union, with all the unions coming in, you're looking at seniority being the reason.
So, but if, are your people going to be inclined to unionize if you've been working with them, you've given them a pay raise, you've shown them their value, you've given them back some of their life with time? Are they going to be looking for a union to come in to change things for you? Do they want to now take the even pay that they're making, they've regained their time, do they want to take some of that and pay union dues?
But they're going to gain.
So,
I'm not being a devil's advocate.
no, I know what you're
But
saying.
as far as
so,
it goes, a union will promise them more benefits.
yeah.
They'll promise them more paid time off. They'll promise them the world.
They'll
but
become politicians.
so
Yeah.
perhaps they won't invite the union in the door if they see that you're trying to
But
add
unions
value.
are
So-
actively pursuing employees.
And they,
Anyone who's been in the workplace has been, for years, has been
so, and,
approached by unions.
and now even more so now that they're going to have the card certification. So it's just something that, I mean, what do you do then? You lock the door.
And they break your legs. Oh,
That's on film, you know.
So, yeah. So another strategy is you want to be vigilant in your 3-month probation on the new employees. You want to have an assessment process and goal setting. You want to make sure that you're watching them. So again, you have to invest more time. You have to be benchmarking these people to make sure that they are the employee that you want. Because once you go beyond that 3 months, it's very hard to get rid of those people that aren't performing the way that you want. The ones that did excellent in the interview and make you full of hope, and then you find out that no, they worked a week and then they took 2 days off. Those absences. So if you know the potential is that people are now going to have these 10 days and they're going to have extended leave access for people in their families that have critical illness, you want to make sure that that job is covered because things like that happen overnight. You can't plan for them. And so when you do this, you have to be extremely cautious that you're not giving those 2 people the exact same job. You want to make sure they still have their independent job descriptions and tasks, but that each other knows. And I'm a big pusher of standard operating procedures, and that's where your staff have a list of things that they do in a day and how they do it. And if they didn't show up tomorrow, someone could go over and pick up that piece of paper and it says, all right, sit down at the desk, pick up the pen. and step by step by step. And those standard operating procedures will save an awful lot. But you have to have the time and the energy to put it in there. You either have to do it yourself or subcontract it out in order to have those to begin with. So.
And keep them up to date, which is a real challenge.
Right, that's
because
right, as things
change
evolve, yeah.
constantly, yeah.
That's right. So, and sometimes the onus is on the worker. You know, if you're doing something new, please make sure that you update your standard operating procedure. So, and that's usually where I start when I go in and start working with a client. Is I will hand a piece of paper to all of the employees and say, write down what you do, and they'll hand back 3 things, and I say, really? So are you going home now? Tell me what you really do. And then once they've listed it down, I'll say, okay, I'm going to shadow you now, and then we're going to fill in the rest of these blanks. And sometimes that's what the employer themselves has to do, because as you get bigger and bigger, you don't always know exactly what all your employees are doing over the course of the day. You don't know which one is checking the temperature in the refrigerators, or which one is mopping the floor at the end of the day, if it's a smaller business. So, and how do they know whether it's their turn to do it or not? So, one thing you can do is consider salaried workers versus hourly workers. That's generally more for supervisory and up that you're going to do that. But by the time that the people get to that level, you know that you're getting more out of them than what you're actually paying for. Those are the dedicated and driven people. And so to convert them onto a salary, you then have the ability to see exactly what your expenses are going to be going forward, rather than not knowing how many hours people are going to work. You know exactly what your payroll is for that person or those group of people. And then you want to examine automation tools. Is there some part of your business or some part of your employees' jobs that could be automated? If you're in a pharmacy, can you get a pill counting machine? It's something that that automation tool, while it does need maintenance, is not going to take 104 weeks off. It's not going to have 2 days for this and 5 days for that and 28 weeks for this. So it's a sad reality. Nobody wants to replace their employees with that. It is an expense to go out with up front, but it's something that you want to think about and know what your options are. You want to explore online innovation. So you want to see, is there something that I could be doing that's innovative online that will service my clients through the business and make it so that you're competitive with the other online businesses, and potentially have, instead of having someone answering the phone, taking in your orders all the time, if it just comes in online, then your employee just has to sit down long enough to fill those orders. They don't have to spend the entire day waiting for the phone to ring. Then you want to seek grants and subsidies. So one of my clients has a worker that comes through a community service and does cleaning at the place of business, and they will now be making the same wage as their skilled workers, the people that have been working there for a couple of years. So yeah, I made a call today and I said to the community service, what can you do so that we don't have to lay off this person? Because it's a reality. If I have a skilled worker making the same wage as this worker, then I'm probably going to have the skilled worker do that job. I've just asked that skilled worker to cut back on their hours. So how can I now turn and say that this person isn't going to take a cut and is going to continue to do the same thing? And their day, and you will get an 8-week subsidy on that employee. If you don't ask, you don't know it's available. And so I just took a leap and said, hey, what can you do? And so it's, again, is that the job of that administrator, or is that your job to run around and do all of those things for you? So, and the nice thing for me is that I can, any of my other clients that are in the same situation, I now know exactly where, or my Chamber of Commerce, I know that I can do the same thing for them. And you want to sit down and brainstorm new products and services or niche opportunities, and that pun is intended. So sit with your staff and ask them, hey, can you think of ways that we can bring in more business, that we can have income rolling in?
Fix everything.
Yeah, so it's like, one thing that I don't understand is how many people who have employees that aren't even followers or contributors to their Facebook. And it's like, I'm paying you to be here and do a job. Why aren't you out there getting all of your friends and neighbors to come and shop here? Because that's your job security, is to bring people in the door that will help to keep you in work. So, and it's amazing the stuff, we sent all of the employees home, one of my clients the other day, and we got a couple of good ideas out of it that they've already come back saying, hey, what about this? Hey, what about that? And they feel like they're contributing, because now they're having a vested interest in making changing the direction of where things are going. So, and then implement strong hiring process and vetting at the interview stage. So there's a lot of people that they have an employee that's, so let's say they're moving away. My spouse got a job somewhere else and I'm leaving now, and off we go. Okay, we have a job to fill. We're not really sure what all the duties are of this person because we've been so busy we weren't paying attention to what they did. So first of all, we have to figure out what they did. And now we have to figure out who, what is the, not just the skills, but the attitude that you want out of that person that's going to be filling that role. And then you're going to carve out a job description, you're going to sit down with the interview questions, and you're going to carefully go through and make up a spreadsheet of how everybody answered the questions that you had, and you're going to make a really strong interview. Does anybody do that? No. One person. Everybody else just says, here, let's put an ad out, somebody will come in. 3 people showed up for the job interview. That one was on time. They were dressed well, and
That one
they,
got a pulse.
and there you go. Yeah, it's way more risky to hire the wrong person at $15 an hour than it was at $40 an hour. You have more to lose. You have more of your time going into the training. The better suited for a job someone is, the easier the training is, the less you have to invest in training to train them. So if you want to take a round peg and try to put it in a square hole, it'll go in there, but there's an awful lot of space there left over that needs filling. So, and then that leads us to our final tip, and that is that paperwork is your new best friend. So, do we have any questions? Or
I would say,
comments
Lee,
or
that you're a very
concerns?
brave lady to be here without a bodyguard.
The same day that they're required to have it in place, you do, and you're not given any lead time to do it. Their royal assent, of course, didn't happen until November 27th. But the meat of the bill has been around for 6 months, and so they've had a little bit of time to start getting their ducks in a row and hire their 175 new people. But they're saying to you, too bad, so sad.
There's probably all kinds of trial balloons in this leak that will leak and
Yeah.
fail and go and end up on the ground. And then, much like the Minister of Finance federally has just changed all kinds of things for self-employment rules, I'm sure there'll be a lot of modifications to this in time, but that requires grumbling, which also requires time to grumble.
So, and you have a world of experience in all of that. So.
Grumbling, I'm a good grumbler.
No, I mean on in the cogs of the wheels.
Yeah, so it, I would suspect an awful lot of this is gonna be modified when, folks just like us say, this isn't working, who's got time? Who the hell has time to do this?
I think a lot of it's going to be modified on June 8th of 2018 when
Yes.
a new power comes in and
But the
says
grass isn't
absolutely
always
not.
greener, unfortunately. All political
I
concerns.
have a couple of specific questions, and you might not have the answers, but you might sort of know the direction. The casual, part-time, temporary, season employment given the same pay as full-time employees doing the equal job, right? There are exemptions based on seniority and merit. I have one specific person I'm thinking of was hired as a manager. She's now a senior. She has stepped back from managerial duties after she's had some pay raises. Do I have to, now she's doing equal work with some of the people that used to be her employees, but she's being paid substantially more.
You can never, ever, ever
I
take
can't
back
take
money.
I can't take
ever.
back money, but I can't
Yeah.
afford to pay
The rest.
people that are making $14 an hour or $13.50 at this time. I can't afford to be paying
So
them all what
that's
she's
where
doing.
your paperwork. That's where your job description. That's where
This is
your
what she
pay
does,
grid.
so she has got this much more.
Whether
above
she's
and
doing those tasks or whether she had to be qualified to fill that position are two completely different scenarios, right? So you can, all of the things that she's done for you, you can put on her job description. Whether you're choosing to not have her do those, that's something completely different. This group of people have a completely different job description, and then you have your pay grid that shows when you start and what you have to do in order to get to this point. And none of those people can say they have all of those skills that she had when she was performing the job at the way that she
The
was.
other thing that I have an amazing maintenance man, but he will occasionally be called in. He's not scheduled to be on call, but he will be occasionally called in an emergency. The heat pumps went down. We need to, or we've had a brownout or whatever, and he will come in. do I need to pay him 3 hours even if he comes in for 15 minutes?
Yes.
So he's the type of guy I need to put him on salary.
If that,
Yeah.
yeah.
If it happens on a regular basis.
It doesn't happen on a regular basis.
No,
I
but
mean-
that would protect you, like, if it is only happening occasionally, then maybe those 3 hours don't matter so much.
Well, and the
But-
thing is, what he does is he doesn't sign in those days, he banks those hours so that he has them if he's going away.
Right, so, and what
But I don't
What
know whether
arrangement
that's
you
illegal
have-
or not.
Well, it's not legal or it is legal until he complains about it.
Well, he's the one who
And-
implemented
right,
it, so.
right, so the moment that he raises his hand and says this is what's happening, you're gonna be fined by the Ministry of Labor for doing it.
Okay.
But
And
is it a formal on-call or is it a callback system? There's a difference. Callback system is, I'm always at home, or I'm always around, or I have my cell phone.
Yeah,
But, you know, if you have trouble, call me, but I'm not on call. It's not a formal definition of on call.
well, and that's why I said he's not scheduled to be
So-
on call.
exactly,
He carries
so-
his cell
so that's-
phone, and more often than not, they'll phone and say, this is happening, well, did you try this or this? And he can they can
That's
fix
a
it.
callback system, that's not an on-call,
Okay.
that's an informal callback system.
but you still have to pay them for 3 hours when they show up.
If he comes in and works and
It's-
he has to just do this, this,
When
and this,
he
it takes
comes
15
in.
minutes.
When he comes in, a lot of these things can be handled over the phone. If he does have to come in, well, you know, you are disturbing him at home. He does have to travel back in, he does have to.
Newer employee goes to the Ministry of Labor and says, we do the same job and they're making much more. If they come to you and you don't have a grid that said that after X number of years, they get to work up to that. If you have no
A
proof,
pay scale,
you
then. a
have
pay
no-
scale
if we have a pay
will
man.
accommodate that.
yes.
Well, that's,
Yeah.
so that's out the window.
So,
Equal pay. As long as the
but you
seniority's
still,
there.
well, but you still have those two employees that started on the exact same day, and one is Superwoman and the other one is Little Miss.
If we have a pay scale, they're gonna be making the same anyway, according to the pay scale.
Well, but the person that's Superwoman should be able to move. Yeah.
Just because you have a grid doesn't mean they have to move up the grid. If they're not deserving, they stay in category 3.
It can be both a time and a merit combined.
Yeah.
So
All of which takes more time.
For the pay scale that we work with now, everybody is in their realm of when they started their seniority. It all goes by seniority.
It's automatic that they get bumped. but
Yeah,
Yeah.
so
so that'll stay the same.
yeah. I mean, your
As far as
your
that-
pay
that
grid could
exemption
show
is-
that
is-
at 5 years you get an extra week of vacation.
What?
It doesn't have to
Yeah.
be anything else but that. It's just whatever. You just have to have that document that when they walk in the door, you say, "This is how it is. This is how it works. This is why these two people are earning something different."
Yeah, so that'll be fine.
We used to have,
Our newest member, so officially today on paper, Clive Emery with his new business of Eagle Video Productions. So welcome, Clive.
Thank you. Glad to be on board.
Glad to have you back. And he was a co-sponsor tonight with Lee and has donated his time to do the video production and editing and everything for us this evening. And of course, that will now be loaded onto our website. So if you do want to see this again or go back and listen to anything,
I am not watching.
just to refresh your memory, it will
jury thing
be.
to do on Christmas Eve.
And remember,
New Year's Eve.
Wow.
The comments will be off.
yeah, okay. It will be under the private member login section, so unless you're an actual member of the chamber, you won't be able to have access to this. We do have some documentation of the presentation printed, so if you do wish to take some with you, Lee has them up here as well. So again, Clive, thank you very much. And he's also brought back his Trips and Trails membership with us as well. So we've really scored having two wonderful members joining us. So we're very happy about that. And I want to thank all of you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to come and join us tonight. We're by no means closing the doors. We're keeping everything open until 8 o'clock. So now feel free to mingle around, mingle and jingle. You can move the chairs out of the way if you want to stand up and stretch. And Lee, do you have anything else?
I was just going to give a little pitch for Clive. He came out to the North Hastings Family Pharmacy for the grand opening and did an absolutely fabulous video for us, so that we could put it on our website and share it on Facebook, so that people could understand what the pharmacy does, all of the services that it does. And so that's actually what brought me to bringing Clive in today, so that we could do this, because I feel like this information really needs to get to as many members as possible, because so many people are just completely in the dark about what this bill is and what it means to them. So.
How did the meeting go? It was a couple weeks ago.
I was in Boston.
Community.
I didn't
There
get
was a
to
big
attend
meeting
that.
with
So
Community Futures,
yeah,
I
so yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Lee. Now we're going to, before you do that, we do have the 50-50 draw.